Hey guys, I'm going to do an interesting little comparison of speakers as best I can using a jumper cable. So I'm starting off, I'm going to use the Tone King Imperial MKII as the amplifier. And in the Tone King Imperial MKII is an Eminence built speaker for Tone King called the Tone King 33. I put a Fat Jimmy speaker. It's their C1270. I believe it's a 70 watt speaker. And I put that in the deluxe reverb cabinet. And then in a Lewis Electric Columbia cabinet behind me is a Jupiter 12LC. They're all ceramic magnet speakers. That's a 50 watt speaker. And so we'll see if I can showcase this. Hopefully the compression of YouTube and my recorder will not distract or take away from the tones. So I'm using Collings 290 with Throbak P90s. And here is the Tone King with the stock speaker. All right, so that is the stock speaker. Now I'm going to use this jumper cable. Going to standby. Sorry, I don't have a switcher, so I have to do this manually and bend over to connect these. All right, here is the Tone King with the Fat Jimmy speaker over in the deluxe reverb. Go off standby. Here we go. Back to the Tone King stock. All right, now we're back just to the Tone King Imperial with the stock Eminence speaker. I'm going to go back one more time over to the Fat Jimmy speaker. Alright, so now it's a Tone King amp with the Fat Jimmy speaker in the deluxe. So I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing in the room because I'm not sure the recording will bear this out. The 70 watt speaker, the Fat Jimmy, it's more efficient. So everything got a little bit louder, there's more bass. There's actually a little bit more of everything than the 33 watt Tone King Eminence built speaker called the 33. Now we're going to come over to the Jupiter. The Jupiter is a 50 watt speaker, and volume wise in terms of fatness and fullness, it's very similar to the Fat Jimmy with its own character. Alright, so let me come over to, that's not it. All right, so I've got this ready for, all right. Sorry about the switch over. If I had a switcher, this would be a lot more elegant, but I'm just a guy with some gear. All right, so, now here is the Jupiter speaker. Everything I'm just using the Imperial head for. Come back over to the Fat Jimmy and let you compare those. All right. Try and do this as quick as I can. And I've just got a double barrel connector. It just allows me to plug right onto the speaker. Those amplifiers are off, so I'm not running a speaker with no load. Here's the Fat Jimmy speaker. That may be overloading the mic just a little bit. I'm hearing more bass. It reminds me, and actually the Fat Jimmy speaker is built by WGS. And sorry about the hunching over. I'm doing this so that the recorder is more in line with the amps. But the Fat Jimmy speaker is built by WGS. So is the Jupiter speaker. I'm going to say I think the Fat Jimmy speaker reminds me a little bit more of the WGS G12C, although I think I like it better. I think there's a sweetness to it. It has a little bit of what I'm hearing as maybe kind of a Celestion G12H30 70th anniversary sort of chime. But let me just play them back and forth. I'll point to the amp and the speaker. I'll just tell you which speaker it is, and I'll do less talking in between. All right, so right now we're on the Fat Jimmy, and then I'm going to go back over to the Jupiter speaker. Again, everything's connected to the Imperial head. Here's the Fat Jimmy. Let me go to the bridge pickup. Now I'm going to take my delay off. Here's the Jupiter, same thing. back to the Jupiter. That was the Fat Jimmy. Bridge pickup clean with P90s. Let me go to the middle. Jupiter speaker. Coming back to the Fat Jimmy. Definitely in the room more bass, so it's sounding fuller. I don't know that that's going to make it sound better. In my experience with audiophile gear is usually what's louder and fuller, sometimes we have a tendency to like it better because we're hearing more. That doesn't necessarily make it better, it just has a different flavor. The other thing that I will share is, again, and forgive me for hunching over, the other thing that I'll share is depending on the character of the speaker, you might change the EQ stack to optimize. So maybe if this has got more bass, I might take the bass down on this amp. But I wanted to keep things equal just to hear the speakers back to back. Also a point of note, the Fat Jimmy speaker is brand new. It doesn't even have an hour on it. The Jupiter speaker, I've played this countless hours, I've gigged with it. This speaker has a lot of playing time. So that may factor into how this sounds. Although I will say, I'm thinking the Fat Jimmy speaker that I know it even looks more like a WGS G12C, maybe just because it's got that same brown frame. It sounds more like that speaker to me than the Jupiter does, even though they're both built by WGS, a great speaker builder. And all those speakers are great, just depends on what you like. So I compared those speakers back to back because I think they're more similar than this 33 watt Eminence built speaker in the Tone King. But I'm going to come back to the Tone King. There's nothing wrong with this sound. It's not as big, rich, full, or maybe as chimey as these speakers, and it's not quite as efficient. It's a 33 watt speaker. I don't know what the sensitivity is, but without changing any settings, it's a little bit quieter than when I plug into the Fat Jimmy over here or into the Jupiter back in the Columbia. So that said, let me come back to the Columbia. So I'm unplugging the jumper cable, I'm putting the stock speaker, just plugging it into the back of the amp head. Here's the Imperial. sequence. I'm going to quickly come back to the Jupiter. Maybe not terribly quickly. All right, now here's the Tone King Imperial with the Jupiter speaker. Hang on, I disconnected myself. Rich sounded speaker. I'm a big fan of the Jupiter speaker. I have been for quite some time. This is my first demo of the Fat Jimmy speaker, and it deserves break-in. So it deserves to have several hours of playing time to loosen things up, and perhaps it will sweeten up. I might say it's a little bit strident. There's a little bit of an edge in the sound of the speaker, but again, that's what reminds me of, boy, I bet this is crazy for you guys watching me to talk sideways. The Fat Jimmy speaker reminds me of the G12H30 70th anniversary Celestion. It's got some of that almost chimey edge, even though it's a ceramic magnet speaker like the H30 Celestion. The bass is very big. Again, bass is usually fairly pronounced in my experience with a G12H30 as well. So, let me come back to, let's see, where are we now? We're in the Jupiter. I'll stay in the Jupiter. Back to the Fat Jimmy and do that same thing. Got to throw one wrong note at the minimum just to introduce the human factor. All right. Again, as you can tell, I'm not one of those professional YouTube video reviewers who has all kinds of crazy gear and aux boxes and switchers, and I don't do video editing, but you're getting one take real-time comparison, so I hope there's value in this for you guys. Here's the Jupiter again. Speaker, and I think it sounds great with the Imperial. I'm tempted to put one of these Jupiters in the Imperial, and it's not that I dislike the 33 watt speaker. It works great, but I think there's just a little more sweetness in this Jupiter speaker. And by the way, I will tell you, the Columbia Reverb is a great sounding amplifier. I love the Columbia Reverb, and this speaker is a large part of that sound. If I compare the Imperial with the Lewis Electric, just going back and forth using the same Jupiter speaker, the Imperial gets closer to the sound of the Jupiter, and then it has the added benefit with the 5-position Iron Man attenuator in the back of the amp. That's a whole nother conversation. But I'm a fan of the speaker. I'm a fan of all of these amps. And the Fat Jimmy speaker, I'm not sure. The bass might be a little big for me. It's deserving of break-in. All right, so where are we? I'm going to come back to, well, actually, let me play the Jupiter real quick with the head, and then I'm going to come back to the Tone King speaker. Let's see, middle pickup position. Back to Tone King Imperial MKII stock with the 33-watt speaker. Now, because it's quieter, I can increase the volume, bring up the bass a little more. It's got some mid-range, I think, baked into the flavor of the speaker. Let me go to the bridge. By the way, I'm just a little less than 3 in the volume, and that's pretty hot. That's like band gig volume typically for me for what I do. It's a good stage sound. If everybody else was at that volume, that'd be a whole lot of sound going on for what I do. Others, depending on what your needs are, may vary. So with that, I'm going to leave you there. What do you guys think? Hopefully that was somewhat helpful and that we could hear the differences of the different speakers. Welcome your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, you like the content, please subscribe. I know this is kind of amateur hour of just leaning over and connecting one amp and speaker to the other, but it also minimizes any componentry, so nothing's in the middle other than a cable that I'm jumpering from the amp head to the speaker. So hopefully there's value in that. Thanks for watching.